we're going to get started. Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We're so pleased to see wonderful turnout. My name is Katrina Shanklin, and I have the honor of representing Wisconsin's 71st Assembly District in Portage County. We're here today because elections have consequences. And 13 days out from Election Day 2018, every Wisconsinite should know that healthcare is on the ballot this election. Today, Donald Trump is here in Wisconsin campaigning for two Republicans at the top of the ticket, Scott Walker and Leah Vukmir. Donald Trump is campaigning for them because they support his efforts to dismantle the Affordable Care Act and gut its protections for Wisconsinites with pre-existing conditions. Leah Vukmir has said that she would cast the deciding vote in the U.S. Senate to gut pre-existing condition protections. And Scott Walker authorized a lawsuit that aims to tear down the law and have its protections for people with pre-existing conditions struck down as unconstitutional. 2.4 million Wisconsinites have pre-existing conditions, and countless more Wisconsinites have, in other ways, benefited from the Affordable Care Act's other coverage requirements, which require insurance companies to cover emergency care, mental health screenings, prescription drug coverage, maternity care, and many other things. Despite all of that, Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker are nevertheless pledging to tear down the law and take all of that away from the people of Wisconsin. Like Trump, Walker and Vukmir want to take us back to the days when predatory insurance companies could write their own rules and unfairly jack up prices on Wisconsinites in need. And that is what I mean when I say that healthcare is on the ballot. That is why we are gathered here today. Because when it comes to putting Wisconsin first, and when it comes to protecting Wisconsinites with pre-existing conditions, it is abundantly clear that Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker are not on our side. That's what is at stake in this election. And that's why I'm supporting Tammy Baldwin and Tony Evers. Because Tammy and Tony have proven that they'll fight for affordable health care coverage for every Wisconsinite, especially the 2.4 million Wisconsinites who have pre-existing conditions. I am now pleased to introduce John Robinson, who will share his personal health care story and highlight the importance of maintaining protections for Wisconsinites who have pre-existing health conditions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Robinson. I have a long history of being involved in the development of health policy on both the state and the local level to ensure that people have access to health care. Today I want to highlight the clear choices in November's election because Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker support backdoor efforts to tear down important protections for Wisconsinites with pre-existing conditions. My wife Mary and I are very fortunate because each of us is a survivor of a stroke. Mary's occurred in 2011 and mine last year. Mary and I were fortunate to have access to quality health care, providers and insurance plan that covered our medical care and our rehabilitation services. The care we received allowed us to return to work and recover. We are also blessed with 4 grandchildren. The oldest is 15, and he is in remission for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the youngest is 2, and he has a rare metabolic disorder that prevents him from processing proteins. Those ailments will follow them for the rest of their lives. We could see health care coverage jeopardized if Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker successfully dismantle the Affordable Care Act and gut the protections for Wisconsinites with pre-existing conditions. Our family is not alone. There are 2.4 million Americans with Wisconsinites with pre-existing conditions. We cannot go back to the days when insurance companies could write their own rules and jack up prices on Wisconsinites with pre-existing conditions, pricing many out of coverage. But that's what would happen if Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker are successful in gutting protections for Wisconsinites with those pre-existing conditions. That's why Trump is in Wisconsin today, campaigning for them. Vukmir and Walker both support Trump and the Washington Republicans in their efforts to gut those important protections. Leah Vukmir has repeatedly said she would cast the deciding vote in the Senate to repeal the Affordable Care Act and gut pre-existing conditions, while Scott Walker personally authorized a lawsuit that would strike down protections for pre-existing conditions as being unconstitutional. Healthcare is on the ballot in November, and Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker support efforts to eliminate protection for Wisconsinites with those pre-existing conditions. That's why I'm supporting Tammy Baldwin and Tony Evers. Both of them care and understand the importance of protecting and expanding healthcare access and improving affordability for every Wisconsinite, whether they have a pre-existing condition or not. So Vic?
Thank you, John. Thank you, Katrina. Good afternoon. My name is Vic Verma. I'm speaking here today because healthcare is indeed on the ballot in November. And with Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker campaigning today with President Trump, I know we cannot trust them to put Wisconsin first when it comes to healthcare access and affordability. It makes me angry to see Vukmir and Walker campaign on dismantling the Affordable Care Act and tearing down the protections. It angers me in particular because I have experienced firsthand the law's benefits and protections firsthand. Because you see, last year, I was involved in a very serious car accident. I broke my hip and ankle on the right side, and the aftermath was very scary. I had complications from surgery that put me on a ventilator for a few days at least. My family and friends told me it was a life-threatening situation. I was not aware because I was on a ventilator and didn't know what was going on around me. I also developed other life-threatening health issues related to the wreck, including a blood clot and sepsis. And then I had proceeded to go through about 5 months of physical therapy afterwards. Thankfully, I'm okay now. But through all of that, my medical bills amounted to $450,000. A lot of that was being on the ventilator, but $450,000, and that's right, that's nearly $500,000. Thankfully, because of the health insurance plan that I purchased through the Affordable Care Act exchange, my out-of-pocket costs were only $3,500. That's a big difference. And for me, the bottom line is the Affordable Care Act saved me from bankruptcy and financial ruin. But now, Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker want to blow up our healthcare system. Leah Vukmir is campaigning on being the deciding vote in the United States Senate to pass through a repeal of the Affordable Care Act and gut the law's protections for people with pre-existing condition and basically take away health insurance for millions of Americans. It was a fight that we fought very hard on last year, and we don't need somebody there to fight against us on this issue. And Scott Walker, as has already been stated, has personally authorized a lawsuit that will strike down protections for pre-existing conditions as unconstitutional. Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker will tell you that they support protecting folks with pre-existing conditions. Don't believe them. Stories like mine show why we need leaders like Tammy Baldwin and Tony Evers fighting for our health care. Because with Leah Vukmir and Governor Walker campaigning with President Trump today and trying to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, it's pretty clear they're not on our side. Tearing down a law that has prevented people like me from going bankrupt during a health crisis is not a viable path forward, and it's not a moral path forward. And it isn't a viable approach to gut the Affordable Care Act's key protections in order to let predatory insurance companies jack up prices or deny coverage to Wisconsinites with pre-existing conditions. We cannot let Trump, Vukmir, and Walker continue their efforts to jeopardize millions of Wisconsinites' health care access. Tammy Baldwin and Tony Evers, on the other hand, will fight to protect our health care access and just as importantly, or if not more importantly, expand health care access. They will fight for us. Tammy will fight with us in the United States Senate, and Tony will fight for us as our next governor of the state of Wisconsin. It is clear that health care is on the ballot this November, and that Leah Vukmir and Scott Walker have proven that they are not on the side of Wisconsinites. Tammy Baldwin and Tony Evers are on the side of Wisconsinites, and I urge Wisconsinites to vote for them on November 6th. Thank you. Sorry.
All right.
Our Democratic nominee for treasurer, Sarah Godlewski.
Hello, my name is Sarah Godlewski, and I'm running to be your next state treasurer. After the stories that we've heard today, it should be clear that healthcare is on the ballot this November. Republicans are working to take access to affordable care away from hundreds of thousands of Wisconsinites, and that's why President Trump is here, campaigning for special interests. So you might be wondering, what does the state treasurer have to do with healthcare? Well, I think, quite frankly, it needs to be doing a lot more because it's not doing enough. I believe our state treasurer should be our state's fiscal watchdog and financial advocate. Recently, the Inspector General got involved with our mishandling of Medicare funding. Wisconsin overpaid $600,000 to managed care organizations on behalf of patients who already had passed. That's our taxpayers, and we should be fighting to get this money back. In addition, the state treasurer should also be a financial advocate for the people of Wisconsin. With healthcare, there's a lot of abuse and unnecessary costs that fall on the backs of hard-working Wisconsinites. I saw this firsthand in January with a prescription that I have been taking that literally increased from $100 a month to $1,000. I remember I called my husband almost in tears because I wasn't sure what exactly to do. Do I take my pill every other day? Once a week? How are we going to pay for this? Families should not have to make decisions between paying for their prescription drugs and their mortgage. As a financial advocate for the people of Wisconsin, I will support Senator Baldwin's Fair Drug Pricing Act, requiring drug companies to disclose information and justify their drug price increases. Transparency and accountability is absolutely critical. Further, this worries me because 23% of Wisconsinites are struggling to pay their medical bills. And if we allow lawmakers to no longer protect coverage for Wisconsinites with pre-existing conditions or cancel young people's ability to stay on their parents' insurance until they're 26, medical debt will only increase. Fortunately, we can do something to address this crisis that won't cost taxpayers a dime, and that's voting this November. Democrats have been fighting for fair and effective healthcare coverage for decades, protecting pre-existing conditions, fighting for fair drug prices, and working for quality care that will benefit all Wisconsinites. The health of our state depends on this. Please vote for Tammy, Tony, Josh, and Democrats up and down the ticket. We can't wait any longer. Thank you.